Violin 12.5, March 28, 2311 AD. The curator was blathering on in his theatrical manner, enthralling a giggly Rosa who hung on every word, but Emma found herself drifting again. Throughout her celebrity, her critics had mostly shed light on reasons to doubt her abilities, and though an attention-starved few had derived conspiracy theories aimed at explaining how Emma could have and thereby must have been responsible for some of the averted crises she helped avert, none had ever before made her doubt her presumed innocence, or given her reason to question whether or not she could in any way be unknowingly responsible. Little was left to mystery for the likes of Emma, for from her there were no secrets. Yet she was dumbfounded by the data surrounding the eruption, specifically the fact that it seemed as if it had been the product of human intervention, if not otherworldly intelligent design. Here she was, the smartest living human on the planet, and at a loss to explain the phenomenon. All while standing next to her friend in the museum, she scoured the earth in search of the minds of experts, volcanologists, geologists, chemists, and physicists, even glancing at a few biologists along the way, thumbing through their coming experiences for any knowledge or newly discovered ancient wisdom that might suffice to explain what had happened, but found nothing. She looked forward into the week ahead, feigning a future in which she would refuse the blessing in order to reveal a false one, wherein she had exhausted every resource known to her in pursuit of an answer, but she returned empty-handed. She combed through the coming week over and over in her mind, looking at the research and findings of every expert in every field that was actively studying the anomalous volcanic eruption and beyond, but uncovered only disappointment. No one on Earth could explain what had happened. None could reason why a dormant volcano, a sleeping giant who should have stayed asleep for unseen ages to come, had been suddenly roused, seemingly flooded with a swelling of noxious material that had not been there in the days prior. The word impossible was cited many times the world over in an attempt to describe it, most often abruptly followed by the notion that it must be possible because it had happened. But there were no answers. She was becoming obsessed. She was trying to stay in the moment there with Rosa, but intrigue is a divine siren, and she was listening to its song and following its call. Despite her vast array of vision, she concluded that there must be something she was not seeing. Something must be happening somewhere that she could not see. It wasn't until they had arrived at an exhibit which she really favored that she came into focus, taking Rosa's eyes and grounding a foot of her own step. She felt a special connection with this one. It was a massive mural, 9 feet by 6 feet in its dimensions. The painter's name was Hannah Dunn. She was an enthusiast of Daniel while he still lived, the source of many of the collected tales of heroism from during his life. Though never published in her lifetime, the accounts she gathered of survivors who claimed to have been saved by him were compiled and printed to comprise one of 2 ongoing best-selling publications derived from her work, the other being Memoirs of a Life in Search of Daniel Dwyer. In many of the religions built around him, parts of her works are cited almost daily. She famously had been rescued herself and openly attributed her survival to Daniel Dwyer's intervention, publicly calling attention to his existence. Though at the time when she had first been saved, he was considered a myth by most, and few took her seriously. It wasn't until the elevator incident that she had her first experience of fame, because it was the elevator incident which made him famous, the day when Mr. 8 met Mr. Red. The ever-talented Hannah Dunn had titled this mural, "He Saves." It was a massive portrait, rendered in black and white, of 74 survivors, most of whom she had interviewed, that had claimed to have been saved by the shadowy figure known as Daniel Dwyer and herself. At first glance, it would seem that Daniel did not appear in the mural, but which was obvious in some of the larger depictions, less so in the smaller, he appeared in the artwork 150 times. He appeared as a reflection in the eyes of the depicted faces. In Hannah's self-portrait, which was fairly prominent and served as the focal point of the mural, his form was very clear and visible in the gleam of her painted eyes, as was that of her attacker. The black form, as depicted in Hannah Dunn's eyes in the mural, was darker by several degrees than the black of her pupils. He was depicted standing with his right arm raised and black ball in hand, ever ready to bring it crashing down on the man that had intended to rape and murder her, who was helplessly trying to escape the grip of the Black Spirit's free hand as it was clasped around his throat and preventing his escape. A close inspection of the mural revealed that the Black Spirit form, now known to be Daniel Dwyer, appeared in the eyes of every face in the giant mural. A very interesting thing to note here is that Hannah Dunn has demonstrated great attention to detail with respect to the varying descriptions of Daniel provided to her by those depicted in He Saves. The curator gestured at the mural. Upon close inspection, you will find different degrees to which Daniel's hand is portrayed holding the infamous 8-ball. There are some in which he is clearly holding the 8-ball normally, others where his fingers are beginning to appear to displace the 8-ball and sink under its surface, and some where his right hand has been almost completely enveloped, effectively replaced with the 8-ball. Though it is not seen today, the scant video evidence of Daniel from the era corroborates the notion that this transformation to the appearance of his extra bodily form did indeed occur. And he pointed to varying examples in the mural where the differences were clearly pronounced. That is correct, he said. There was a time late in Daniel Dwyer's life when it would have appeared to any lucky enough to witness his appearance while manifested in spirit form that his right hand was in fact completely encased inside of the ball. It would have appeared that the ball and his hand were one and the same, and he was often described in the later accounts as having a club for a hand. Rosa inspected the mural closely, stopping to view the faces in the vast painting one by one, Emma looking on with her. Emma asked her to stop and look longer at some of them than others before allowing her to move her gaze about again freely, and Rosa was most happy to oblige. She was quite used to serving as Emma's window to the world, and content to do so most days. She was a lover of Daniel Dwyer herself, and was herself familiar with several of the more famous accounts of vigilantism portrayed in He Saves. She didn't know all 75 of their stories intimately the way that Emma did, of course, but she had some knowledge of the history, and naturally knew the story of the rescue of Hannah Dunn. Emma made her wealth of knowledge abundantly clear when she started rattling off the names that went with the faces and added little tidbits of random information about each of them as they perused the detailed work of art, and in doing so blew the curator's mind more than a little. He thought that he was obsessed, but he realized now that he didn't hold a candle to Emma Carter. Her obsession clearly outweighed his. He thought that she must really, really love Daniel Dwyer to know so much about him, and that she did. Emma Carter was enamored with Daniel Dwyer, smitten really. The two of them were more alike than they were the like of anyone besides, and shared common ground unattainable to all but the two of them, and she knew it. They had a connection, she could feel it. Somewhere under his stoical, even-keeled facade, she believed he knew it as well. Daniel was solemn in his vow that no man should find himself currying his favor over another, and was well practiced at treating all as equals. He would not show favoritism, but she knew. She knew that if it came down to it, he would choose her over them. As Rosa's gaze peered at a particular figure in the picture, Emma narrated a brief telling of the history, the story of Ana Hernandez, survivor of the earliest of Daniel Dwyer's acts of vigilantism known to Hannah Dunn, though it was far from the first in reality.